The US Open is nearly upon us, and we have finally some big tennis events in the build-up for the US Open. First up in Canada, it's Toronto, and this is my instant draw reaction. Let's get straight into the draw, and we've got the National Bank Open top half. Carlos Alcaraz back in action, fresh after winning Wimbledon, the number one seed. Can anyone stop him? We'll have to wait and see. But I think it's extremely tasty, really. He's got a bye in the first round. Potentially Ben Shelton, another young, really exciting player, playing on the hard courts, remember. You'd expect Shelton to be at his best in these conditions. And if we do get that matchup, it could be one we see for many, many years to come. Moving down, Bublik Hurkacz, that's the first round match, and they are in the same little quarter here as Carlos Alcaraz, so that could be interesting. Moving down, Cerundolo against the Canadian. Rusevori's got a qualifier. Rune with the bye, so Rune versus Alcaraz would be a quarter-final matchup. So that's very interesting. Still on the top half, we've got Tsitsipas. Look at this. Monfils, Eubanks next to each other. That one will have some entertainment. I really hope Eubanks can do it. No offense to Monfils, but I'm a massive Christopher Eubanks fan. And it could be revenge for Tsitsipas if he gets Eubanks in the next round, because, of course, he's the guy who beat him at Wimbledon. So Tsitsipas will have a point to prove. I fancy Eubanks to do it again, though, if that is to be the case. Felix in dreadful form, and he's hoping that qualifier is not going to be one in inspired form because he's not looking good. Sonego versus Murray. Murray's in some good form at the moment, playing some good tennis. That is going to be a very good matchup, and whoever can win it, you'd fancy to beat Felix based off the way he's been performing. Berrettini, not a bad draw for Berrettini, but he's on the little bottom bit with Jannik Sinner. So Sinner and Alcaraz in the same half. They'd only be able to play in a semi-final matchup, so it wouldn't be a final. And we could have a big Italian matchup in Berrettini-Sinner very early doors. Let's go to the bottom half. Here, let's start all the way from the bottom because I'm assuming here it is. Daniil Medvedev, the number 2 seed, the reigning champion who won this event last year. He's got to buy through. And just looking at this initial section, I don't see Pospisil, Zhang or any of the qualifiers really troubling Daniil on these hard courts. There is Lorenzo Musetti here and Nishioka. That's a great first round match and one I can't really call. I'd like to see Musetti do it, but Nishioka, another player who has shown time and time again he's not bad on the hard courts. Dimonor, Cam Norrie, tough, really tough. Dan Evans not in a good section here. I wouldn't fancy that. And Taylor Fritz, he's just won an event back on the hard courts again. We know he is someone who can do very well. And I think it will be great if he gets to play Jarry, because Jarry has been the big riser in the rankings. He was really good at Wimbledon. I was impressed with how he performed against Alcaraz. I've been impressed really how he's played on all the surfaces. We know he's a clay courter, but being a big frame, big serving guy, he can adapt to the other surfaces as well. And I think he's someone no one will want to play, especially as an unseeded threat. Moving over to the other side, Rublev's in some really good form. And at this section here, I really like it for Rublev. I don't see any of these troubling him so much. You could maybe look down and say TFO. But then saying that, I don't think TFO has had the best few weeks. It's certainly not the TFO of last year. But building up to the US Open, we know he can come into his own at any moment. Karatsev, does he need an introduction? We don't know what Karatsev's going to turn up. I don't think it will be the best version. Manarino's just won a grass court event. Is that going to help him, give him some confidence? I don't see Rublev really losing. I think he's got a good shot, and it just depends if TFO is playing great. Zverev, on the other hand, he's also sort of coming back into his own now, and it's crazy because he's a 13th seeded player. When you think of Zverev, you always think sort of top 5. That's not where he's at the moment, but this section I think he'll be very pleased with. I don't really like Casper Ruud much this year. He's shown spells of tennis where he can play good, but all on the whole, Casper Ruud not being the player which he was the last few years, in my opinion. But he can still turn it on, and he's got a lot of ability to beat some of these other names. I fancy Zverev really to come out of this section initially, just looking at it, and that would set up some amazing semi-final and quarter-final matchups. Me and Ben are going to be back doing some live watch-alongs for them. And let me know, guys, what do you make of some of my analysis? That is just some of my initial thoughts on the draw and how I see things going without really going into too many details. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. I'll read out some of the comments. I'm sure as I'm on the train going to work or doing whatever I'm doing in my life. But I do really appreciate all the comments, and me and Ben do read them. So please leave your comments. Last one I want to end with, and this is Carlos Alcaraz's Toronto draw. Medvedev, some could say he's the favourite. He won it last year. He's very good on the hard courts, arguably the best player in the world on the hard courts. Don't hate me, Djokovic fans, but I know I really do believe so much in Daniil Medvedev on these hard courts. But we're going to be speaking about Carlos Alcaraz's Toronto draw. Of course, there's no Djokovic here. And his draw is extremely tough, I think. By first round, then Shelton early doors, Hurkacz or Bublik. Bublik actually, I think, been one of the best players this year. I think you could say he's been a top 10 player, the way he's been performing recently, and I've been really impressed. Rune versus Paul. Paul, another one who's been gone under the radar, but maybe one of the most consistent Americans in 2023. Rune doesn't need an introduction. That'll be a great matchup if we are to get it again. Sinner, Tsitsipas semi-final. I would much rather the Sinner one. One will be competitive, the other wouldn't be against Carlos Alcaraz. Tsitsipas doesn't have any weapons to really beat him at the moment. And then final of Medvedev, Rude, Fritz or Rublev. I personally think it's going to be one of the Russians. I fancy either Medvedev or Rublev to make that final. But let me know what you guys think as well. Alcaraz, if he can get to the final, he'll be all right if it's Daniil Medvedev. Rublev, I'm not so sure. That'll be a fascinating matchup. I can't really recall an Alcaraz-Rublev match, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think Alcaraz, though, it's just so hard to look past him. He's just beaten Novak Djokovic at Wimbledon, of all places. And I think that is going to give him so much confidence. And it's certainly given the whole tennis world confidence, because you have to be crazy to ever doubt Carlos Alcaraz. But anyway, that is just my quick summary of thoughts on the draw in Toronto. Please join us for the live watch-alongs. Let me know what you think about this draw. I think it's stacked. I think it's going to be exciting. And for me, this is the first real event since Wimbledon in which I'm going to watch properly. And let's see who comes out on top. And of course, we'll be giving them a mention on the next episode of the Countdown on Monday, because we're getting closer to the US Open. Make sure if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you very soon.